everyone. Welcome to Plants and Politics. So, not all Democrats are created equal, and that's the number one thing that liberals must begin to understand if we're ever going to make progress in this country, and especially if we want to prevent another Trump or Trump-like presidency. So, having said that, I want to talk about Democratic incumbent Henry Cuellar. If you're not familiar with Cuellar, he recently won his 9th election in the 28th district in Texas, and he was running against a true progressive named Jessica Cisneros, and I'll tell you in a minute why it's really a tragedy for all of us that he didn't win, including Republicans, pretty much the whole world. So it has come to light now that a dark money group which helped him win, was funded by big oil, almost entirely funded by big oil. A group called American Workers for Progress spent over $700,000 on English and Spanish ads and mailers for Cuellar. Now, these ads were very different than what we're used to seeing. They didn't directly promote Cuellar's reelection. Instead, what they did was they told voters to call and thank Cuellar for all of his work related to healthcare issues. So because they used this sneaky roundabout promotion of Cuellar, but they didn't actually promote voting for him, it allowed them to avoid having to report their activities to the FEC, to the Federal Election Commission. And American Workers for Progress, number one, is in no way a progressive group. It has no affiliation to labor groups, and they in no way, shape, or form advocate for healthcare issues. So their name and what they purport to care about couldn't be farther from the truth. Actually, what investigative reporters found is that this dark money group actually received $1.3 million from the American Petroleum Institute. This is a lobbying group that works for companies like ExxonMobil, Shell, BP America, and as they say, hundreds of others in the oil and gas industry. And this isn't the first time that Cuellar has been tied to big oil. So over the course of 2019 and 2020, Cuellar's largest donations came from the oil and gas industry. Now remember, this is a Democrat, supposedly a Democrat. He received almost $250,000 from these companies, from oil and gas companies. And the super PACs that contributed the maximum allowed donation to his campaign were big oil companies that are affiliated with this American Petroleum Institute, this lobbying group for big oil. So what do they get for their generous gifts to Cuellar? Tell him, Johnny. Well, they get a lot. Cuellar has an even worse score in the House with the League of Conservation Voters than some Republicans. And Republicans are the party of big oil. So the fact that he's scoring lower than they are is just outrageous and pathetic. So for example, here's some of the reasons behind their scoring. In 2015, Cuellar worked with Republican Joe Barton in an effort to lift the ban on crude oil exports. That ban had been in place since, I believe it was the mid-70s. Not only that, but Cuellar was one of the first ones to lend his support in lifting that ban. And according to Sludge news outlet, quote, he convinced the Democratic leadership not to whip the bill and allow members to vote however they wanted. But in addition to that, last year, Cuellar voted with Republicans again. He votes with them all the time. He voted with Republicans last year to allow oil and gas extraction in the Arctic refuge. So essentially, he said, I don't care what happens to the Arctic. I don't care about pollution. I don't care about damage to the environment. I don't care about spills that might pollute our waterways even further. Let's just allow it. Let's allow big oil to do whatever the hell they want. He also voted against the ban on offshore drilling in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. So again, doesn't care what happens to our oceans, doesn't care if it kills off the fish and all of the living organisms in the ocean that literally keep us alive, that are literally part of an ecosystem that is keeping our world functioning. So this guy is scum. He also voted against a permanent ban on offshore drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. This is exactly why I keep saying any old Democrat will not do. Just because they have a D behind their name does not mean that they are automatically a good person or that they give a damn about the same things that we do, or that they even vote like a Democrat. This guy votes like a Republican. This is why I say Democratic voters need to wake up. There is big money corruption on both sides of the aisle, not just with Republicans. When you just blindly vote for somebody because they have a D behind their name, when you don't demand better, when you just vote for the incumbent because, oh, that's who has represented us in the past. I get it. I used to be that way. I used to do that. I'm ashamed that I paid that little attention to it. Now, if no one was running against him, I would say, okay, well, yeah, vote for the Democrat because on other issues, he probably votes more like a Democrat than a Republican. But he had a challenger. Again, his challenger, Jessica Cisneros, was a huge climate advocate. She was publicly in favor of the Green New Deal. She would have been a win for everyone across the world, not just in our country. But this guy is actively working to destroy climate, or he just doesn't give a damn. And this is why we have elected leaders on both sides of the aisle dragging their feet on climate change. You know, why do they mock the Green New Deal when we're literally on the verge of collapse and the point of no return in regard to the climate? This is why. This is why. Because just as with Republicans, Democrats, some of them are literally paid to ignore the science. This is why, even though when Pelosi had a supermajority in the House and Democrats held the majority in the Senate and Barack Obama was president for 2 years, nothing happened. This is why so many people, especially the younger people in this country, are so disillusioned and why they sit it out. Because they voted for Obama, thinking that change was coming, thinking he was going to be a true progressive. And then he acted like every other establishment Democrat and Republican before him. We saw little change other than the signing of the Paris Climate Accord. So I'm asking Democrats, I'm asking liberals in particular, pay attention, not to what they say, not to whether they care about identity politics, if they're willing to wear a kente cloth. Pay attention to what they actually do and don't do. Our lives literally depend on voters paying attention to the candidates. What they stand for, who funds them is the most important thing, and how they vote. It needs to be about policy, not personality. If you're voting based on personality, you're never going to see change. And what's going to happen is we're going to have people pissed off again and people sit out the next election. And whether it's Donald Trump on the ticket or Donald Trump Jr. or Ivanka or even some equally reprehensible Republican, don't question why they win in 2024. and why we're back to the same nightmare again. We need progressives. They are the only ones who do not take money from these dark money groups, from PACs, and all of these big industry giants. They're the only ones we can trust. All right, guys, as always, like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching and listening. I'll talk with you soon. Take care. Thanks for listening to Plants and Politics. The only way we can take our country and power back is to spread the truth and build an army. So remember to like, follow, subscribe, and share on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks again.